Okay. Looks like people are starting to log in, so we'll give a couple seconds for people to get in, and then I'll do introductions. Hi, everybody. Welcome to View. Today we will be doing a webinar about getting into galleries and how to promote yourself and how to maintain those relationships and network. Today we have Susan Hoffer joining us, who some of you might have seen on our last Zoom session last week. And she's in Lake Placid right now and is an artist that we are showing in the Eco Gallery. And Susan, would you like to say anything else?
I'm just happy to be here, and it's great to be talking with Kelsey again about art.
Yeah, and I am the exhibition manager and curator at View, and I am also an artist as well. So I hope that my insight on both sides can help in this discussion. Okay, great. So Susan, I wanted to start off just by talking about how you start to make your work. I think that's important that we just discuss that before we even get into, maintaining connections and things like that.
So mostly I start with, my ideas, and my ideas are often just centered around the things that are important to me or things that I notice. I look in my environment. I think about people that I interact with. So my art comes from my experiences, and that's kind of basically where I start. I Then I think about the materials, of course, and I love paint. I love everything about oil paint. And so that's kind of where I start, the idea, and then of course the material.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part of it is using the material you like and that you're drawn to, not forcing yourself into any type of medium as well.
Right. And I know there's always some new kind of material that, is very popular or very you know, in the now kind of thing. And I, you know, I toy with branching out, and, because every artist wants their work to be relevant. I think about digital additions to my art, or maybe I should work more with Photoshop or something, contemporary. But I just stick with what I love, and that has served me well, um, rather than trying to reinvent things or ways of expressing myself, you know.
Yeah, great. So how did you first start showing your work?
So when I first started, it was after I had a body of work. Like, I had lots of paintings to choose from. And then I started mostly by joining galleries or art centers and participating in their member shows. It was a great way for me to get my confidence up and just to see what other people were doing, and that was a big factor. I did in the early years. I did that for many years, actually, before I tried to enter, juried shows. So it wasn't even just an art center. I showed everywhere that I was given an opportunity. Libraries, hallways of schools, um, pop-ups, I never turned anything down. I was super grateful, for opportunities to show in coffee shops, it just didn't, it never mattered to me where. It was just great to put what I was doing and what I loved up on the wall. And so that's pretty much how I started. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know you need to start somewheres, and also being open to different opportunities is always great as an artist.
Absolutely. And I'm still open, to opportunities. Just the same opportunities where I started. Um, I really don't ever say no, and I'm often eagerly searching out, opportunities. Doesn't matter where. Yeah.
Yeah, how often are you applying to jury shows or open calls?
So I have a rule. Um, you know, I I apply and apply and apply until I receive 50 rejections. So normally, I'll apply to say 50 and maybe get one or two yeses. And, I just keep plugging along. I read about venues. I think, okay, where would an audience receive this well? What gallery would receive this well? I'm a figurative painter, an oil painter, so I stay away from exhibitions where the venues are more focused on other media or other styles, etc. So it's, I just keep plugging, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that research element is important to knowing where you should apply, because there's definitely venues that won't suit every artist. So
exactly.
making sure, looking at past shows, most places have archives on their website so you can see what type of work has been shown.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. I sometimes I'll divide my day if, in half, and I'll spend, say maybe 4 hours just researching venues or applying. I keep everything in a folder. And so when I get the rejections, I just date, you know, what, you know, what the response was and when it occurred. And then each year I'll just recycle and send new work in, a new artist statement, especially venues that I'm interested in. Like, I've always admired the exhibitions at the View. I heard about the View from a friend who had a solo show here. He's a photographer, and he spoke very highly of the experience. And so I said, well, I'm going to apply. I did the research. I saw that there were many types of exhibitions. And I think I applied 5 or 6 times before Catherine reached out and said, we might be interested. Let's have a conversation. And so I just don't get to, I mean, of course I feel discouraged sometimes, but I just know that it's all part of it. You have to be strong. Um, you have to not be critical of yourself. You
Yeah, of course. And knowing that you may not have been the fit for that time is important.
right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even, if I'm rejected, for example, and I say rejected, but I get I don't get into a residency. I always am curious. Well, how many people applied? Um, and and sometimes there's an awful lot. So the other thing I do is sometimes the gallery or the residency will tell you why. They'll say, well, if you're interested in knowing why, let us know. And I have to gulp and think, oh boy, here comes the criticism. But I always respond and say, well, I would love feedback.
Mhm.
And the feedback is really helpful. Sometimes it's as simple as you know, you need to push a little bit more, or if you're going to your work a little bit more, or if you're going to, show work, show more of a range of work,
Mm,
or you need to refine your artist statement a little bit, what your work is saying and what your artist statement is saying aren't really matching up, or sometimes I've heard, be careful with jargon, art jargon. Speak in your voice, even if your voice is much simpler. Don't use catchy words, you know. So a lot of it has been super helpful, just getting the feedback. It's sometimes hard, but you know, I
yeah,
think it's
and not being afraid of it. It's just there to help you be better for your next application.
mhm, absolutely. So there's always lots of reasons, and you know, that sometimes you know, are accepted into one venue versus another venue. And each time I've learned, I'm not looking for a fan club. I'm looking for a real conversation about how is my work relevant, and is it causing you some curiosity,
Mm.
about your own experiences? Is it giving you something to sort of chew on? And it's it's you don't always have answers, you know.
Yeah, of course not. And then curiosity is one of the biggest traits with an artist and greatest traits. And it keeps pushing our work to be better. And that eventually leads to more gallery shows or more residencies.
Sometimes, right? And sometimes you have like a period of maybe a couple of years where, I'm living off of juried shows, or, it's a kind of thing that waxes and wanes. But the joy that I have in working is really why I do it. It's there's it's my work in the studio, and I spend about 4 to 6 hours a day, most days, painting. Um, it's me time. It's thoughtful time. It's pleasurable. It's not work. Sometimes I listen to podcasts while I'm painting. Sometimes I listen to music. So it's not just one thing, you know. It's a bunch of things that I'm enjoying doing. The solitude, the quiet. Um, Time slows down.
Mm,
Um, Being in the studio gives me an opportunity to reflect on things that are important to me. I I feel like I want to be a voice for others, but first I have to be a voice for myself, right?
yes.
So
And I saw something you said earlier. It's very interesting where you divide your day into more kind of the business side of things versus the making side. And that's one way I sometimes will actually just set aside a whole day in a week, and that will be my day to do things like that.
that's a wonderful way to do it. This way, you're not interrupting your studio practice if you're on a roll. You know,
Yes.
I just have divide the day just because sometimes I need a break from the hard work of writing applications.
Yeah.
It's tedious gathering your slides and keeping everything in order, rewriting artist statements, writing opening letters. For me, that's the hard part. The treat is in the studio.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh, so
definitely.
important. Yeah.
So what type of review process do you do for yourself in order to solidify and clean up artist statements and applications?
So I usually, well, I do have a process. I usually just sort of write without editing. Um, I look at what other artists are saying, you know, especially artists that I admire. Um, I listen to podcasts where artists talk about their their work, so I'm looking, to sort of connect with artists that are really authentic in what they're doing. Eh,
Mhm.
Then I'll do a second draft and a third draft, try to um, make sure that I'm succinct and I'm clear. I try to make sure that in my artist statement, that my artist statement does three things. The first is tell a little bit about the work, give clues to the work. Then I try to um, connect my work historically
Mm.
to maybe, its heritage, where other artists have come before me, and laid the ground for what I'm doing. And then the third thing is to make sure there's enough in the artist statement that a person not looking at the work would understand the work. For example, words like I'm a figurative painter, I use interior spaces, um, I like a light, I like to use light as a metaphor. I use thick brushwork and textured paint. So those are my kind of three things that I, consider for each statement. I think that's helped me,
Yeah,
so
and that cohesiveness is extremely important because if you're on a jury panel and you're reading a statement, you're looking away from the work, you want to be able to have those words remind the juror that that's the same work because they're looking at anywheres from 100 to 400 pieces of work when they're jurying,
absolutely.
depending on the venue. And you need to make sure those things really align and you have a strong hold when you put that application in. You don't want to have, I think jargon when you're saying that is really good explanation because a lot of people can fill fill up a lot of space with a lot of different words that actually isn't that relevant to their own work.
I think that's very wise. Yes, I think you said that beautifully, Kelsey. Um, I think sometime, and I keep it short as
Yeah,
well.
concise, very good.
You but the last thing I do is I have the luxury of being, my partner is an English teacher. so,
That's
uh,
awfully lucky.
so not only do I share my artist statement with other people that are not artists, I mean, I really do share it. I say, does this make sense, to you? But my husband will go through it and he always finds something, you know,
Mm.
um, and that has been super helpful. So I think to have others read your statement and someone who's really good with English, writing is super helpful. And I think it's important not to necessarily pick friends that won't take a risk in hurting you. You
Yes.
you really don't do yourself a favor. I think, people are saying, "Oh, that's great," or, it doesn't mean they have to say it's horrible, but, give constructive advice. I've had my one friend is a psychologist, and a counselor, and I often give my work, my statements to her, and she finds things, um, like she'll say, move this paragraph not from the top to the bottom, and move this one up to the middle, and and that's super helpful because it's easier to follow your train of thought if you do that.
So you need kind, constructive, and organized friends.
You really do,
Yeah.
I think.
And you're right, there is different parts of these statements and applications when you're writing. It's not just grammatical errors you're looking for, it's also that order is very important. Do you grab the attention right away? Because if someone's reading through that many applications, they might not even read all of them all the way through. If it's a page long, like for a residency,
Mhm.
they might just be doing brief ones, but if you capture that attention right at the start, they'll do a more in-depth reading.
And I, when I'm asked, when a residency or a gallery or an art center um, wants an artist statement, for example, I always will tweak it a little bit to my proposal. Like I mean, I'm always working, I'm always writing, or I pick work specifically for, based on my conversation with the curator. Um, Sometimes I'll say, well, why don't you go look on my website. I and I know that we talked about this at another time, but I make sure that I'm not difficult to work with. That
Mm.
is super important. That I'm flexible, I'm pleasant. I don't present a big ego of, you know, just where people are uncomfortable with me. I'm grateful and I'm not embarrassed to say, hey, I'm utterly thrilled and I'm utterly grateful. And sometimes people say, well, why are you saying that? You're a very good artist. We're grateful. I'm like, no, 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 I'm really grateful. Like, I need to say that, you know?
And
So,
and that is, keeping connections going and having long-lasting connections in this world. Being
mm,
a just a good person to work with, be a good egg, Nobody wants a rotten egg in the mix.
right. And the other thing is, it may be the exhibition might be the most important thing to me in the whole world, but it's important to realize that the gallerists and the curators and the directors, they have a very big job. They are working 60 to 80 hours a week, talking to lots of different artists, and often they're tired. And so I try not to suck up all the air in the room. I
Yeah,
try.
that's an interesting note. It's a lot of galleries have more than one show happening at a time. View, it can be anywhere from 3 to 4 shows at a time. And you know, gallerists, exhibition managers, we're talking to everyone almost in a day. It's a lot of attention in different places.
Mm,
But when you are the person that is nice to speak with and nice to deal with,
yeah,
your attention is almost wants to go to that person because they're lovely to be around and lovely to work with, and you probably get work done quicker with them just because things are easy.
yes, I think
Yeah.
so. And you want everyone to have a good experience. You want the viewer to enjoy the work, but you want the person and those that are, putting the work up and have skills that I don't have, you know, marketing. And I mean, I was so grateful for the way that you hung the show, Kelsey.
Thank you.
I knew how hard it was, how heavy the paintings were. And, I was really grateful to, when I saw it, I thought, wow, I don't know that I would have been able to put it all together with that same eye. So I was, you know, and 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 it wasn't just my show. You did two other exhibitions at the same time, you
Yep.
know.
It's definitely at View, we have so many different things happening and then we have programs going on with it. So, but then we also have a marketing manager, Travis, who's incredible and does a lot of the promotion, which like in your case, it's good because a lot of that gets handed over to the gallery. And then you're able to, there's a beneficial relationship between the artist and the gallery.
Mhm. It's kind of like teamwork, you know.
Yeah, it very much is. And then even with installing larger shows at View, we have volunteers. And then, we have facility managers. So it really is teamwork. I'm not going to know everything about promoting in a gallery as much as like down to the how do you actually sync up a program to send out a social media post. So there's someone that knows how to do that, and then maybe you write the content or the artist writes the content, so it really is teamwork.
I think so. I mean, that's my experience, you know.
Do you do
Um,
any promotion yourself on your end?
I work on my website, you know, and but I don't seek out, you know, sort of other than, I mean, I don't invite people too often into my studio. I'm not really good at that sort of thing, you know. I've never been a gallerist. I've never worked in a museum. So I'm okay with that because I do know that, we all have different strengths. Um, what I do is I apply to things and I guess in a way that's how I promote myself, you
And
know.
you did hit the point of a website. That's extremely important as an artist. I think it's almost near impossible to be an artist working nowadays without one.
Yes,
That's the first kind of point of call when you're get somebody's name on your desk and you want to look at their work, you immediately go to a website.
yes, yes. And I keep things that are personal off my website. I just make it about my work. I set it up in pages, so if someone's interested in process, they can go to that page, or paintings, that page. So I try to keep it super updated and organized. I've got about 5 paintings to add to my website currently. So I have someone that helps me with my website. So I just make appointments like 3 or 4 times a year with this web designer, and I look at it and add to it. So,
Yeah.
you know,
That's great you are able to work with someone to do that. Some people, if they're at the start and they need to have that for promotion of themselves, can do it on their own. That's how I started. I have had some help as I got further in my career, but everyone is capable of having a website. There is a lot of help online. You can watch YouTube how to, use Wix or Squarespace. So yeah, it's pretty important aspect, and it is great when you get to the point where you can hire someone to help you, but you can do it at the beginning on your own.
absolutely. And for years, I managed my own. And then, probably 8 or 9 years, I managed my own. And now I can manage the current one, but there are things that I can't do. And, and the person I go to is a friend as well. So it's not, it's not like I'm, you know, paying a whole lot.
So yeah, I have a husband that can help you write statements and then a friend with the website. You've really got a good bunch there.
Absolutely. Very grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it is reaching out to the community is an important part of the art world and the people around you.
Yes.
And, looking on online for things like this where that are free and available to the public, we have more throughout the next couple weeks. One of them is writing artist statements. So, and that's free and anyone can join. So, there is ways to improve even if you're at a low budget when you're starting off.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I participated in all of those. I mean, learning what you're describing, how to write an artist statement, how to set up a web page. There were so many free opportunities. Um, you know, how, how to uh, look for galleries, what kinds of questions to ask the gallerist, what work to send when you're inquiring, what to say. There's so much. You don't have to embarrass yourself by reinventing the wheel, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it is never reinventing the wheel totally. You can use old copy of things and just updating, doing different versions. And like you said, reorganizing is important.
So, I mean, getting back to our original point, you know, um, about how do you apply to galleries, um, I would just say, start small, um, look for local opportunities, um, use those opportunities to see what other people are doing. Um, Often I would, if I liked somebody's work, I would write their name down and I would look up their website, for a website. So I would research about that person. I got to know people um, in that way, by looking up their work on their website. I would go to receptions, gallery receptions. And even though I feel shy, I mean, we all kind of are a little bit, most of us are, and nervous. I would just force myself to just go and be friendly with, the artist who's showing their work, even if it's something as simple as, I really like this exhibition, or, that painting over there is just beautiful. And so I began to just feel more like I had a community when I did those things. And then the other two things are just, keep applying until you um, have exhausted everything or every place and and set your sights high, pick a high number. Like I do 50, but my husband is a writer. He does 100 venues. When he's got 100 rejections, he'll um say, okay, I really worked hard, you
Yeah,
know.
that's a lot, 100, and just not letting it take that blow to your ego, like we said earlier, is important. Yeah.
It's part of the process. And then learn from each opportunity, recycle the,
I
you know.
think the keeping track is very good practice as well that you do. Where
Mhm.
are you finding your calls mainly?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot on Facebook. I look up art centers and galleries. They often have on Instagram or Facebook um, their, you know, their pages, and they put their calls up there. So
Okay.
really, and that's kind of how I do it. There are, if you look up calls for work online, you'll see that there's different places that will list calls. Um,
I even find some on Instagram as well, just by following galleries that have, like you said, like work like your own and
Absolutely.
post their calls.
Yes. Yes. And so after I sort of I get a list of galleries, and this is where you need a whole day. I'll look up galleries in Brooklyn or good gallery, galleries in Queens, and then I'll research those galleries, for example. And if I see some that, are looking for work similar to what I'm doing, then I follow them on Instagram. And so I see their calls. Another place that has been valuable for me is the painting center down in Manhattan. So, I, I follow their posts for work, and so that's been super helpful. Another thing is to follow artists friends,
Mm-hmm.
or even artists that I admire. I do that. I'll spend a day looking up artists that I admire on Instagram. And, you know, sometimes um, they will post, oh, they got into this show or they got into this residency. And I think, oh, and then I check it out and I'll apply maybe a year later. So
Yep.
it's a lot of that. There's no right way to do it, but I know that I have to do it.
Yep. And I was just thinking the painting, what was it called in Manhattan?
Oh, the painting center in Manhattan.
Painting center. There's things like members, like so I work with glass a lot. So there's GAS, which is the Glass Art Society.
Oh,
And if you're on there, a member with them, they just email different things of, this is what's happening this month. So there's a lot of different member societies you can join for different mediums,
yes.
and they'll let you know they're almost doing part of the work for you by just being a part of their membership. So that's
Yeah,
another good way.
absolutely. I also joined Praxis. It's a center for aesthetics. It's run by Brainerd, and I don't remember his last name, but he will, you can get his emails, and he will let you know what, uh, where there are calls for work or
Mhm.
opportunities for grants. And so I read that. He sends something every 2 weeks, I believe. And he
And what
helped.
was that name again?
His name is Brainerd. Let me just, ooh,
Just in case if anyone was wanted to write it down.
yeah, Praxis, Praxis, the Praxis Center for Aesthetics. And he kind of runs it. He's brilliant. He helped me write an artist statement about 3 years ago. And that was really good experience. You
Oh,
know, it was
that's
kind of like taking a class.
yeah. And there is classes you can take for, I do know at View we're having a social media class that you can take about as artists or authors and how you promote yourself. So it's
That
another opportunity we have going on. I was gonna ask, once you've made these connections with galleries, how do you maintain your relationships, and how valuable do you find in like keeping that relationship going even after you're not showing somewhere?
So I make an effort to go to other artists' receptions. I don't always get out as often as I would like, but a couple of times a year I will, show up and, just make a point to, meet people and say hello and, you know, support what they're doing apart from me, what they did for me. I think that's super important. you know and all of the venues are mostly on the weekends, so a Friday or a Saturday, so it's easy to just leave a couple of weekends a month I mean, it's doing things that I would want to do.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
that's it.
definitely. And that is a form of promotion outside of the artist doing their own promotion on social media and then working with the gallery. Being in person is a way of promoting yourself.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
You did ask in terms of promotion. I do have an Instagram and a Facebook page, and I do post current work on those pages. Um,
Someone I just saw in the chat asked, doesn't the gallery want the artist to promote themselves in their shows, social media activity? And of course we do. And
yeah,
if there's ways we can help do that by giving our marketing material over postcards or things, that's also a relationship that happens.
I see another question. Juried shows usually have an entry fee. Do you do 50 applications at 30? That's a really good question, at $30 each. Residencies mostly don't have an application fee. Juried shows do. Many shows don't. Art centers don't.
Mhm.
So I mix it up. Um, the other thing I do is I work part-time, a couple of days a week, and I just set aside that money um, for application fees. Um, I write applications for grants, which sometimes you'll get a lump sum and you can use those for art materials. I keep um, records of everything I spend for my taxes. Uh,
Yep.
so it's almost like running a small business. Sometimes I do not apply to shows um, where it's $50 or $40. Sometimes I have to make choices. I allow myself a certain amount each month.
Yes, that's what I do as well. I make a budget of how much I can spend either in a month or like a quarter at a time, just so that I don't go over budget and then it goes into material cost. So there is a balance there. I did see someone had another question. Is sending out so many applications, has it ever happened that two places accept you for the same slot? And if so, how would you handle that? That can definitely happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a large body of work. So before I start applying, um, I make sure that I have enough work and that I'm not applying using the same artwork for um, duplicate shows that overlap.
Yep.
And that's so for that, I use a spreadsheet. Sometimes it may not be that, or I may not be able to use a work that I really would love to use because it's been accepted into another venue. And so I will use a different work to apply. But remember, I'm getting a lot of rejections. So it doesn't really happen to
I-
me.
I've actually coincidentally just have had this happen in this next couple months.
Oh, no.
Uh, yep. And it's a 1 day overlap. So I did reach out to the gallery and just asked, could it be a day late? And they were okay with that. But if it was any more than a day, I probably wouldn't have reached out or wouldn't have submitted the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that keeping a spreadsheet is important. Also, if it happened that you did get accepted in two things and there was overlap and you really wanted both, you can professionally reach out and say, this has happened. Is there another piece of work you might want? But it matters if it's a select show, a large show, it depends. Because if you're one of, 50 people in a show, they're probably just going to say, no, then you're not in. or, we don't really have time to accommodate for that, or the juror didn't see it, so we can't accept it.
Mm.
So it does matter on the situation and the circumstance of where and how you applied.
Absolutely. You have
Because
to be real careful, so you don't wanna get a reputation as, sort of, doing that
Mhm. It can
either.
come off as flaky and just unorganized, and you don't want that. People want you to be on top of it and predictable, because you said it a little while ago, being an artist is almost like having a small business. And I do look at it in that way sometimes as well. You have to handle things as if you are a business,
That's
particularly in professional relationships, but don't forget your personality is there.
right. And we're human, we make mistakes. People understand the occasional mistake, but like you say, Kelsey, you don't want to be unpredictable.
Yeah.
And people, I think, expect you to run your business like a business. The it yeah, it's lots of fun in your studio sometimes, or you can get lost in the process, but you still need to come up for air if you want to participate um, in showing work.
Mhm. And that's sometimes in art school isn't always a taught thing about how much isn't just studio making time. And I think as people come out of art school, or they go into it without an education, start to realize, oh, I actually have to be quite business minded for this as well.
I think colleges try to help young students by, professors give deadlines and there are consequences um, for not meeting a deadline, no matter what, right?
Yeah,
So we both experienced that.
of course.
So, I mean, people try, and it's also a part of, just like you say, being organized and mature in approaching your work, or approaching the promotion of your work as a business, you know.
Yes. I was just gonna say, some people have already asked questions, but if anyone else has any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat now. As we're getting near a close, just wanted to remind people of that. So Susan, I was wondering as well, once you've gotten into a place, when do you decide you can start promoting that you're actually going to be in that show? Just because some people might not be aware of how that works in different timing.
Yeah. So I take my cue from the gallery. I often, like, I don't promote myself before, um, they do. And what I will do is, once I see that they're advertising, I will share the promotion with with, like a Facebook page or Instagram or some other, an email to friends, and I will use their advertising, not my own, um, to promote the show. I will say to some close friends, "Oh my goodness, I hope you'll be around, for this. It would be lovely to see you at this reception." Um, but I try not to overstep myself. You
Mhm.
I try to be super respectful, and every gallery does it differently.
Yep, I've signed some contracts before where it says do not announce this until we like let you. So, paying attention to those contracts and how you can promote their gallery. Maybe you need to use their logo when you're doing it, or anytime you publish material in reference, you need to include that they supported you. There's different things like that that are worth looking at and paying attention to.
Absolutely, yeah.
We do have another question. Oh, this is a nice one. I'd love to hear which podcast you're listening to if you know the titles.
Oh my
That's
goodness. So, um, oh, now I'm really on the spot. I'm going to look at ideas. I know I love ideas.
Mhm.
So they're all on my,
And when me and Susan were talking
so
recently, she also noted that she does a lot of research and reading. When you're outside the studio, which is also very informative to writing your own statements and things like that.
absolutely. So I listen to the Great Women Artists podcast. And so it's with Katty Hessel, and she's currently interviewing Sarah Z. That is such an excellent podcast. I listen to The Gray Area with Sean Illing, um, The Atlantic magazine in audio, although sometimes those can be a little boring, you know.
We were not listening.
Tapestry by CBC Radio. Um, let's see, The Daily, the New York Times Daily.
Listen to
Um,
that one as well.
Diane Rehm, I love Diane Rehm. She does such great interviews, and she's just been around forever. And then I do books on tape. So I just finished Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead. It's a really good book. She's been talking about it and promoting it, and it's supposed to be it was just life-changing for
Oh,
me.
okay.
I learned so much about Appalachia and just the issues that the people face there. I like to paint people in my community, my rural community, you know, and I'm trying to give voice to my neighbors, family, my friends. Barbara Kingsolver did this with Appalachia, where she lives. She talked a lot about the opioid crisis and just was really giving voice to how the people, felt about their struggles, why and how. So
Great.
it's,
Yeah, it's incredible how you can find another art form that you still connect to, even if it's not the same as yours.
yes. Well, we were talking before, we both are taking music lessons, you
Yes.
know. So, I mean, there's just I have a sense of curiosity about the world, and I don't want to be rigid in the lens that I use. I want to be open to the way people feel and just changes that are necessary, right? To live an authentic life.
And I think that's very evident in your work. You can see that. And I do love that you have written statements with your work. It helps lift them up and you get to know a little more detail about it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I don't want to present myself as somebody who's, oh yeah, I've got all the answers. I'm just as scared as the next guy. Every time I write an application, I'm thinking, what the heck? What am I doing? Was this a wasted 3 hours or something? But I know that if I believe in my work, that I need to find ways to promote my work.
Yeah. And it's good to not think about any of that time wasted because it's always that you're just improving yourself and your practice.
Mhm.
And failures do help you become better.
And on a humorous note, when I first started writing my my artist statements, my husband would always say, "Gosh, Susan, you have a comma problem." And after, 15 years of doing this, he says I'm getting better at my
I
comma.
have a problem too, so I know how you feel, Susan.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that have come in. I think we've covered quite a bit. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, noticed that it was just fun talking with you and getting to know you, Kelsey. And I'd like to thank Catherine and, you
I'm
know,
sure she's watching, so she hears you out there.
I- I think I was a little more nervous this time than last time because, it's easy to talk about my work, but it's hard to sort of feel like I have something to offer to other people. I learn from other people. I don't feel like I have a whole lot to offer.
Well,
You know,
you've
so
done so well. I've really myself, I've enjoyed hearing what you've had to say, and I'll take that on board as well. So I'm glad you were able to join us. And we do have more of these in the coming weeks with different people. So it's good to see different perspectives. And I'm glad I got to do two of these with you. So,
and I with you. Thank you, Kels.
all right. Well, everyone, have a good night and thank you for tuning in. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.